nobody noticed the exact moment Marcus Reed stopped believing in love. Not when he stood alone in the kitchen at 2:13 in the morning washing dishes from a dinner he barely touched. Not when he stared into the dark window above the sink and saw a man who looked older than 54. And not when he heard his wife Vanessa laughing softly upstairs at a text message that clearly had nothing to do with him. The moment happened quietly. The way heartbreak usually does. Marcus dried his hands slowly while rain tapped gently against the windows. Upstairs, Vanessa moved through the bedroom humming softly. 18 years earlier, that sound comforted him. Now it made him feel like a stranger inside his own home. He glanced toward the microwave clock. 2:13 a.m. Vanessa had returned home an hour earlier claiming she stayed late helping organize a charity event downtown. Marcus nodded when she told him. He always nodded. Because after years of marriage, people sometimes stop asking questions they are afraid to hear answered. He reached for her coat hanging over the dining chair. At first he only meant to move it. Then he felt something heavy inside the pocket. Marcus pulled out a folded receipt. A hotel receipt. Downtown Chicago. 1 room. Paid in cash. His stomach tightened instantly. For several seconds he simply stared at the paper while reality struggled to catch up with suspicion. Room 814. 2 guests. Marcus closed his eyes. Not again. Because deep down, this was not the first sign. There had been deleted text messages. Late-night business meetings. Perfume he did not recognize. Tiny lies. Tiny betrayals. But Marcus had spent years surviving denial. He folded the receipt carefully and placed it back inside the coat exactly where he found it. Then he sat alone at the kitchen table in complete silence. The kind of silence that changes people. Upstairs, Vanessa continued humming in the shower. Carefree. Normal. Like she had done nothing wrong. Marcus lowered his head. Maybe I am the problem. And that was the tragedy of Marcus Reed. Even after years of betrayal, he still blamed himself first. What Marcus did not know was that his wife had been living a second life for nearly 7 years. And what Vanessa did not know was that within months, cancer would enter their lives like a storm neither of them could escape. Marcus Reed had spent most of his life becoming the kind of man nobody worried about. Dependable men rarely attract attention. They simply show up. Again and again. For nearly 2 decades Marcus showed up for everyone. Especially Vanessa. At 54, Marcus carried the quiet exhaustion of a man who spent his entire life solving other people's problems. He worked for the Chicago Transportation Department managing train schedules, delays, emergencies, and angry commuters. Every morning he woke at 4:45 without needing an alarm. Coffee. Work boots. Weather report. Then out the door before sunrise. Routine had become his identity. Their suburban home was modest but beautiful because Marcus built most of it himself. The floors. The cabinets. The backyard patio. Every piece carried his fingerprints. People admired their marriage constantly. At church, couples called them relationship goals. Neighbors joked that marriages like theirs barely existed anymore. Even their family photos looked perfect. Christmas pajamas. Family vacations. Anniversary dinners. Smiling children. Smiling wife. Smiling husband. But photographs only capture appearances. Not distance. Not loneliness. Not the slow emotional starvation happening behind closed doors. Vanessa Reed once loved Marcus deeply. At least she believed she did. When they first met, she was 29 and exhausted by life. Marcus entered her world quietly. He listened. Remembered details. Walked her to her car after late shifts. Made her feel safe. When he proposed, she cried before he finished asking. The early years of marriage were beautiful in ordinary ways. Cheap apartments. Burned dinners. Financial stress. Building a life together piece by piece. When their son Jordan was born, Marcus worked overtime so Vanessa could stay home. When their daughter Lena arrived years later, Marcus painted the nursery himself after 12-hour shifts. To Marcus, providing for his family was not sacrifice. It was purpose. And Vanessa loved him for it. At first. But over the years something inside her changed. By her mid-40s, Vanessa felt restless. She spent nights scrolling through social media watching old classmates travel the world while her own life felt painfully predictable. Laundry. Groceries. School events. Church functions. The same streets. The same routines. The same husband. Marcus noticed changes before he understood them. New hairstyles. Expensive makeup. Gym memberships. Secret smiles at her phone. Late-night texting. Still, Marcus said nothing. Because loyal people often mistake silence for patience. One Sunday after church, a neighbor laughed beside the grill. "You and Vanessa figured marriage out better than the rest of us." Marcus smiled politely. Across the yard Vanessa laughed with friends. And for one painful moment Marcus realized he no longer knew whether his wife was genuinely happy or simply good at pretending. Later that night Marcus climbed into bed beside Vanessa. The glow from her phone reflected softly across her face. Marcus turned toward her carefully. "You okay?" Vanessa looked up quickly. "Of course." Then she smiled. But something about it felt delayed. Practiced. Marcus turned off the lamp and faced the opposite wall while Vanessa continued texting silently in the darkness. And although neither of them understood it yet, their marriage had already begun collapsing long before either one admitted the truth. His name was Adrian Cole. And the first thing Vanessa noticed about him was confidence. Not arrogance. Just effortless confidence. They met at a charity fundraiser Marcus was supposed to attend before an emergency shift forced him to cancel. Vanessa went alone. The ballroom glittered with expensive lights and polished laughter. Vanessa felt invisible almost immediately. Then Adrian approached her beside the bar. "Bored already?" Vanessa laughed politely. They talked most of the evening. Adrian asked questions Marcus no longer asked. What dreams she still had. What music she loved. What she would do if responsibility disappeared. And something dangerous happened. Vanessa felt seen. When the event ended, Adrian handed her his business card. Vanessa should have thrown it away. Instead she slipped it carefully into her purse. The texts began days later. Simple at first. Then constant. Morning messages. Late-night conversations after Marcus fell asleep. Soon Vanessa began hiding her phone. Deleting messages. Protecting her screen. Adrian complimented her constantly. "You are beautiful. Your husband is lucky." The attention hit harder than it should have. Because Marcus never stopped loving her. He simply became buried beneath work, responsibility, and exhaustion. Vanessa began comparing two different men unfairly. Marcus represented commitment. Adrian represented escape. Their first lunch became another. Then hotel rooms. Then a second life. The affair lasted nearly 7 years. For years Vanessa convinced herself she could manage both worlds. Family dinners. Church. Anniversaries. Then secret hotels. Lies. Fantasy. But lies grow heavier over time. Marcus noticed her pulling away emotionally. Passwords on her phone. Coldness during conversations. Distraction during family gatherings. Still, he stayed silent. Because part of him feared the truth. Everything shattered on a cold Thursday evening. Marcus searched the bedroom closet for insurance paperwork when he discovered a hidden cell phone tucked beneath folded blankets. His pulse quickened immediately. The screen lit up. A message appeared. "Miss you already." Another message followed. "Wish you stayed the night." Marcus stopped breathing. He opened the phone. Thousands of messages. Photos. Hotel confirmations. 7 years of betrayal. Marcus sat on the edge of the bed while his entire reality collapsed around him. There were messages sent while he worked overtime. Messages during family vacations. During holidays. One photo showed Vanessa smiling beside Adrian in a hotel robe while Marcus remembered sitting home alone believing she attended a church retreat. Marcus lowered the phone slowly. Not rage. Not screaming. Just devastation. He heard the garage door downstairs. Vanessa was home. Moments later she entered the bedroom carrying shopping bags. Then she saw the phone. Everything drained from her face. Marcus looked up quietly. "How long?" Vanessa burst into tears. 7 years. The words hit harder than shouting ever could. Marcus stared at her like he no longer recognized her. Was any of it real? Vanessa cried harder. "I loved you." Marcus looked physically ill. "You do not do this to someone you love." Vanessa collapsed emotionally. "I was unhappy." Marcus nodded once. "And instead of talking to me, you buried me alive." That sentence destroyed her. Marcus walked out into the rain without another word. For the first time since the affair began, the fantasy died. 3 weeks later, another disaster arrived. Vanessa had cancer. Aggressive. Advanced. The news spread through the family like another explosion. 1 week they discussed divorce. The next they discussed chemotherapy. Jordan reacted with anger. "This changes nothing. She cheated on you for 7 years." Marcus stared quietly at hospital paperwork. "I know. Then why are you still helping her?" Marcus looked upstairs toward the bedroom where Vanessa lay terrified. Finally he answered softly. "Because I cannot watch someone die alone." Upstairs, Vanessa overheard every word. And guilt hit her harder than chemotherapy ever would. Treatment began the following week. Marcus stayed beside her through every appointment. He brought blankets. Handled paperwork. Sat through 6-hour treatments. Vanessa's body weakened quickly. The chemotherapy made her sick. Her hair began falling out. One night Marcus found her crying in the bathroom staring at strands scattered across the sink. "I cannot do this." Marcus stepped closer carefully. "You are not alone." Vanessa searched his face desperately. "But I hurt you." Marcus swallowed hard. "Yes. Not cruel. Just honest." That honesty broke her further. Meanwhile, Adrian disappeared almost immediately after the diagnosis. At first he sent flowers and supportive texts. Then fewer messages. Then silence. Eventually Vanessa realized the truth. Adrian loved fantasy. Not suffering. Not responsibility. One evening she called him crying after treatment. He sounded distracted. "Maybe you should focus on your family right now." The illusion shattered instantly. Later Vanessa saw photos online of Adrian smiling beside another younger woman at a rooftop party. While she sat bald and exhausted beside a hospital bed. That night Marcus returned home and found Vanessa crying at the kitchen table. He left. Marcus understood immediately. Vanessa stared down at her trembling hands. "I destroyed my family for someone who disappeared the moment life became difficult." Marcus sat quietly across from her. Present. Still there. If this story is touching your heart so far, subscribe to the second act and turn on notifications for more emotional stories about love, heartbreak, forgiveness, and second chances. Winter arrived early that year. Inside the Reed home, time became measured by treatments and medication schedules. Cancer stripped Vanessa down brutally. One evening after chemotherapy, she stood before the bathroom mirror staring at her reflection. Most of her hair was gone. Her body looked fragile. Marcus knocked softly. When he entered, Vanessa whispered through tears, "I do not recognize myself anymore." Marcus looked at her reflection quietly. "I think this is the first time you actually do." The words were not cruel. That made them devastating. Later that night, Vanessa asked Marcus to sit beside her. Snow fell quietly outside while 18 years of buried truth finally surfaced. "When I met Adrian, I told myself it was harmless. At first I just liked feeling noticed." Marcus listened silently. "You loved me so consistently that eventually I stopped appreciating it." Tears filled her eyes. "I confused excitement with happiness." Marcus finally spoke. "So you traded reality for fantasy?" Vanessa nodded. "Yes." Then she whispered the truth haunting her most. "The more I betrayed you, the more I hated myself." Marcus stared quietly. "You did not deserve any of it." For the first time since discovering the affair, Marcus allowed himself to fully believe that. This was not his fault. Vanessa reached weakly for his hand. "Do you hate me?" Marcus thought carefully. "I tried to. But hate takes energy. And honestly, I do not have much left." Vanessa broke down sobbing. Before leaving the room, Marcus tucked the blanket gently around her shoulders. Such a small act of kindness. Yet it shattered her completely. By February, the doctors stopped speaking hopefully. The treatments were no longer working. Vanessa understood time was running out. One evening she sat wrapped in blankets holding an old leather notebook. "I need to make things right before I die." She began writing letters. One for Lena. One for Jordan. One for Marcus. And one to God. Writing exhausted her quickly, but every word mattered. When Lena visited, Vanessa looked at her daughter with tears in her eyes. "Do not ever underestimate quiet love. The people who love you the loudest are not always the ones who love you the longest." Jordan struggled more. His anger remained heavy. One evening Vanessa looked at him and said quietly, "I broke this family with selfishness." Jordan's eyes filled. "Did you ever regret it?" "Every single day. No excuses. Just truth." The hardest conversation was with Marcus. One night he found her awake beside unfinished pages. "I do not know how to say goodbye to you." Marcus sat quietly at the edge of the bed. Vanessa cried openly. "I am sorry for every lie. Every hotel. Every moment I made you feel unwanted when all you ever did was love me." Marcus covered his mouth as emotion rose inside him. Vanessa clasped her shaking hands. "I need your forgiveness. And I need God's forgiveness too." Tears rolled endlessly down her face. "I sinned against my family. And against him." Marcus finally squeezed her hand back. Vanessa sobbed harder than ever. Because forgiveness does not erase consequences. But it allows wounded hearts to breathe again. The following Sunday Vanessa gathered her family together. Snow fell softly outside while silence filled the room. "I failed all of you." Jordan lowered his head. Lena cried quietly. Vanessa looked toward Marcus. "And I hurt the best man I ever knew." Then she looked upward. "I am asking God to forgive me too. Not because I earned mercy. But because I finally understand how badly I needed it." The room fell silent. Then slowly Jordan stepped forward. Lena followed. After a long moment, Marcus joined them too. Not because the pain disappeared, but because love sometimes chooses mercy while scars still remain. Vanessa Reed died on a rainy Sunday morning in April. Marcus sat beside her hospital bed holding her hand. Jordan leaned against the wall crying silently. Lena stood near the window unable to stop shaking. Vanessa's breathing had become shallow. Every inhale sounded painful. Marcus leaned closer. "I am here." Vanessa searched his face through exhausted eyes. Then she whispered faintly, "I am sorry." Marcus closed his eyes as emotion crossed his face. This was the final apology. The last thing she would ever ask. Marcus lifted her trembling hand gently to his forehead. "I know." Tears rolled down Vanessa's cheeks. Lena stepped closer. "It is okay, Mom." Even Jordan broke completely. "I love you, Mom." Vanessa's eyes found Marcus again. Always Marcus. The man she hurt most deeply. The man who still stayed. Her breathing slowed further. Marcus leaned close. "You can rest now." With almost no strength left, Vanessa whispered one final sentence. "Thank you for loving me anyway." Marcus broke down sobbing. Not quiet tears. Years of pain and love pouring out all at once. Because despite everything, he never stopped loving her completely. Moments later, Vanessa Reed took her final breath. The room became unbearably still. Marcus remained seated beside the bed long after the monitors fell silent. The funeral took place beneath gray skies. Friends filled the church speaking about Vanessa's kindness and warmth. When the pastor finished, Marcus unexpectedly stood. He unfolded Vanessa's final letter with trembling hands. "She once wrote something to me." The church fell silent. "If love were measured by loyalty, you were the richest man I ever knew." Marcus swallowed hard. "I spent a long time asking how someone who loved me could hurt me so deeply. But before she died, Vanessa taught me something important. Broken people still deserve grace." The room became emotional instantly. She made terrible choices. But she faced those choices honestly before the end. And I believe God saw that. Months passed. The house felt empty at first. Marcus still woke at 4:45 every morning. Still reached toward the other side of the bed sometimes before remembering she was gone. Grief arrived unexpectedly. In grocery stores. At stoplights. During certain songs. But slowly life moved forward. Marcus began volunteering at a cancer support center downtown. One evening a grieving husband asked him quietly, "How did you survive losing her?" Marcus thought carefully. Then answered honestly. "I stopped asking whether people deserved love. And started understanding how badly all of us need it." Years later Marcus would eventually love again. Quietly. Unexpectedly. Not because Vanessa was forgotten. But because grief no longer controlled him. One warm summer evening Lena sat beside her father on the backyard patio. "Do you regret staying after everything Mom did?" Marcus looked toward the darkening sky. After a long silence he answered, "No." Lena looked surprised. Marcus smiled sadly. "Because people are more than the worst thing they have ever done." Tears filled Lena's eyes. "Your mother lost her way. But before the end, she found it again." Rain began falling softly across the patio roof. Marcus looked upward briefly. Then quietly whispered words no one else heard. "I forgive you." And somewhere deep inside the ruins of everything they survived together, Marcus Reed finally began his second act. Thank you for listening to this emotional journey. If this story moved you, please subscribe to the second act, turn on notifications, and leave a comment below with your thoughts on Marcus's difficult choice. We will see you in the next story.